I think everybody is in. That'll be joining with us right here at 12. Welcome to the Monday Noon. My name is Candice Gliatto. I am a Qnity educator and coach and the director of training and development. I'm also a salon owner. I own Citrus Salon located in the Bay Area in California, in Portland, Oregon. I am very excited to be here today to share with you a little bit about my favorite subject, which is helping our team members grow. So before we get into that, our agenda for today, we are going to start out by just welcoming everybody and really going through what's new here at Qnity. What have we been working on and where are the opportunities for you to engage with us that are coming up? Our gap focus today is the growth gap. We're going to be talking about communicating around compensation value and growth opportunity. This is vitally important to our team members and really will help support employee retention. So we're really excited to dive into this with you today. Then, of course, as always, we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions or things that you want to share that you do that work well for you, we have an opportunity to do that at the end of our session. So what's new with Qnity? We have some amazing workshops that are coming up just around the corner. These workshops are designed to help fill the gaps within our business, specifically execution, growth, and profitability. Our next execution workshop will be in November. This one's all about planning for the 2025 year. If you have not taken the execution workshop yet, I highly recommend it. And if you have, please know that this is a working workshop. So this is where you get to create your plan with a facilitator and the support of the Qnity team. So that's a great one to attend. Also coming up is the growth workshop in September, followed by the profit workshop also in September. These workshops are great. They go hand in hand. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that we go deeper into in the growth workshop today on our session. And then, of course, last we have our succession workshop coming up on October 7th. So let's do a little review of the 5 gaps of business. As you know, our Monday noon calls are really focused around solutions and best practices that will help fill these 5 gaps. What we know is that when these 5 key areas of our business are performing well, that is going to keep our business really moving forward. So the 5 gaps are engagement, execution, leadership, growth, and profitability. Engagement is how connected with the business our team is, how connected they are with their craft and their clients. Execution is, do we get the things that we say we're going to get done? Leadership is the ability to really inspire all participating people in the business to move towards a common goal. Growth, our focus for today, is about driving revenue, and profitability is all about managing money in and money out to be able to drive a profitable business. Today's topic, growth, is all about driving top line revenue, driving money in. And to do that, we need to have really confident and empowered team members. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, which is how can we communicate around compensation to be able to drive employee engagement, empower our team members to be able to really drive what we call their intrapreneurship, meaning the business that they run within our business. And how can we create clarity around their compensation? Now, some interesting stats to start with, and if you are listening, please open up the chat because I love to hear from you. What do you think the average length of employment for a service provider in a single establishment is right now? How many years, how many months, what do we think is the average length that our service providers are staying with our salons right now? I'm just going to peek the chat here. What's our 2 years, 1 to 3 years, 3 years? Yeah, some great guesses. So the 2024 Industry Workforce Survey from Talent Match, their most recent results show 2.8 years. Now, that's not a very long time. So why are they leaving? We've got to ask ourselves this question. Why can't we hold on to employees on average a bit longer? Well, the number one reason that a service provider chooses to leave, what do we think it is? Take some guesses. Now, I'll share with you in the past, this survey showed that what our service providers wanted was flexibility. And if you're a salon owner or manager that's listening on this call, you're probably thinking to yourself, flexibility, yes, I've been chasing my tail to provide flexibility for a long time. Holly, your guess is culture, also something that is important. The number one reason, though, is that they feel like they don't have the opportunity to make more money or grow professionally. This is from the most recent industry workforce study. So all of us owners and leaders that are here listening on this call are probably thinking to ourselves, what do you mean? There's tons of opportunity. How come our service providers aren't understanding that there's opportunity to make a lot of money or for themselves to grow professionally at our salons? It really comes down to, how are we supporting this, the communication around what this opportunity looks like? Now, if you are keeping up with what the work that we do at Qnity is, we have an arm of the business called Qnity Institute. This is our boutique data firm where we are collecting insights around compensation, upcoming P&L study. Let's take a look at the reality of service provider earnings. Okay, so there's some misinformation out there that we have to make sure that we are navigating. The 2022 US Bureau of Labor Statistics put out a report that said the average hourly rate of a service provider is $16 an hour. Now, that seemed a little bit fishy to us. The data that we collected was showing a completely different story. The average hourly rate of the 2023 compensation study was $40.50. Now, that's not a bad gig. Now, what does that translate to as far as annual pay? Bureau of Labor is saying 33,000. Our data is showing 54,600. And something to note about this metric here is that that is not considering a full-time work week. So our standard hourly work week in most industries is 40 hours. What we're seeing in our data collection is that the average number of hours worked per week for a service provider in the salon and spa industry is 26 hours per week. So if we were to take those annual earnings, the data that we collected, and we were to annualize that, what would that look like if these service providers worked 40 hours a week? It's almost $85,000 a year. So again, and you may have seen these stats before, but it really shows that there is a lot of financial opportunity in our industry. In fact, 24% of the people that were surveyed or of the participants in the compensation study would earn over $100,000 a year if they were working full time. Now, I'm not here to tell you that everybody needs to work full time because that may not be the reality of our business. But what this does show is that there is a lot of opportunity. Now, the perception is that of what we shared earlier, $16 an hour, not a lot of flexibility, but the reality comes from what we just shared now. So how do we bridge the gap between that perception of what the opportunity in our industry is and the reality? Well, there's two things that we can do. One, we can create a deeper understanding of compensation value. What is the true value of the compensation that we provide to our team members? The other thing we can do is utilize tools, and Qnity provides a lot of those tools that support clear communication around compensation value and compensation opportunity. How can we empower our team members to be able to grow and really reach their full potential? So let's start with creating an understanding or communicating true compensation value. So take a look at this image. What do you think we're looking at here? This is, you may have put it together, is just a simple banking app where you can see your money going in and your money going out. This right here is somebody's paycheck, their direct deposit hitting from pretend salon and spa. We talk about pretend salon and spa quite a bit, but this is what your team members are seeing. It's a simple deposit that is, your net deposit showing up on a banking statement, looking at it for a second, if that, right? This is their perspective of what their income is. And maybe if you have somebody who's paying a little bit closer attention, they'll take a quick look at their W-2 at the end of the year. So this is the only thing, if this is the only thing out there that's showing what the compensation value at your business is, this might not be a powerful or visual enough way to communicate that. So we know these realities. We know that there's a lot of opportunity. We also know that there's a large percentage, 96% of our industry is offering employee benefits. And those come at a cost and they have a value to them. So what we really want to look at now is, how do we communicate that and what needs to be communicated as far as full compensation value? So here we've got one of our signature Qnity tools, the 9 Grid, and you might want to take a quick screen grab of this once I populate it. These are some of the things that you might consider sharing with your team as it relates to their full compensation value. So of course we have gross earnings. Most of us are doing that already, and our W-2s do that as well. What about benefits? We know 96% of everybody is offering benefits for their team. Those aren't free. So what is the value of those benefits? Also, training and education. If you're offering paid time off, again, a huge value that should be broken out and really shown separately from gross earnings. Growth opportunity. You ask anybody in other industries, what was the increase of your salary from last year to this year? They might say 3%, 4%. In our industry, sometimes we're doubling. So we've got to show what that growth looks like in a real visual way. Hours worked. Thinking back to a few slides ago, where we looked at the income, but then we looked at the hours worked. Not a bad gig for part-time hours. Average hourly rate. This is a really clear and easy way to understand how somebody's being compensated for their time. And what else? Every business is different. You're going to offer different opportunities and different benefits. What needs to be shared with your team members so that they can have a true, deep understanding of what the value of their compensation at your company is? Now, how do we communicate it? The example of the banking app or the W-2 that I shared earlier, they're not very visual and they're not very simple. How can we lean into these Qnity principles of simplicity and using visuals to communicate compensation value in a way that makes a lot of sense and drives a lot of clarity? So I'm going to share with you an example here of a visual that one of my Qnity team members, Heath, has used in his business. Now, it's not super visual and simple, but it is very important to identify what's being articulated here. What we see here is somebody's total W-2 compensation at around $80,000. And what we see over here is what they refer to as hidden compensation. So these are other things that are quantifiable that show up in somebody's compensation value. And the difference between these two numbers, $14,000 in additional benefits. So somebody's perspective of their gross earnings could be 80,000, but the reality is that it's $14,000 more. Okay, so we really want to make sure that we're doing our job in pointing these things out so that people understand what their opportunity with their companies are. I'm going to share with you a super visual example that I use at Citrus, my own salon, to communicate annual compensation value. This is something that my team has received over the last several years and something that they really look forward to and is very meaningful to them in their decision making of how they want to continue to grow in their career. So we're going to zoom into this a little bit. Taylor Swift is my pretend employee because I wanted to make sure that I was protecting my employees' privacy, but this is an actual compensation summary from one of my team members. Now, keep in mind, I'm in California and our income situation is a little bit different here, so these are pretty high numbers. But what I really want you to take away from this is how this is all broken down and communicated in a really, really simple and visual way. So here in our top section, we've got our total wages. And broken out from that, I have paid vacation and paid sick time. So they can really see this is money that was earned when I wasn't even here working. Next, we've got our year over year growth. I made a comment earlier about how we ask our, if we were to ask people in other industries what their year over year salary increase looks like, it's 3, 4, 5% maybe. In this industry, that's really, really different. And you can see here with Taylor that her income increased by 33% in just 1 year. Now, look, guys, they're not doing the math like this themselves. So it's up to us to be able to communicate, look how much you have grown. Now, Taylor had a 33% total income growth. Then we do offer benefits. And so we want to make sure that those are quantified and communicated as well. So here we can see that Taylor had an additional $8,381 in benefits and also in taxes paid by Citrus. Next, and this is probably the most important takeaway you can have right here, is a breakdown of hours worked and average hourly rate. Now, nothing against our service providers, but sometimes they do forget that they're working part-time hours. And so when we break this down into an average hourly rate, it drives a lot more clarity on what their opportunity is. So here I like to compare year over year growth. What I've got listed here is hours worked. So you can see Taylor here worked about 1,200 hours. On average, she's working 24 hours a week. Now, if we remember Taylor's total annual income, she's at almost $100,000 a year working 24 hours a week. That is a really great opportunity. And then, of course, her average hourly rate. The other thing that we can see here on this screen is that her hours worked actually decreased by 6%, and her average hourly rate increased by 20%. So Taylor's really crushing it. So ultimately, we can see that Taylor's total wages came out to about $96,000, but her total compensation value was about $102,000. So are we doing our part to really clearly communicate that difference so that our employees can see what their opportunity looks like? Now, I'll tell you a story. I mentioned that Taylor is a real person that worked at Citrus. So I'll tell you the story. When I first created these annual compensation summaries, I sat down and I was so excited to share this information with Taylor because she had an amazing year. And as I was going through the summary with her, I saw Taylor started to look a little bit worried. She was kind of sweating, and I'm going, are you okay? I found out the reason why she was so stressed when we were having this conversation was that she had just signed a lease to be able to open her own suite. Now, she didn't know what the opportunity that she had at Citrus looked like. And I had this conversation a little bit too late. And, Taylor did go and she opened her suite, and we still have a great relationship and we're in contact. But what if I had had that conversation a little bit sooner? There probably is a really good chance that I would have retained Taylor because she knew what her true opportunity was. So if you haven't started doing this yet, I really highly recommend we start having these conversations and communicating these opportunities in a way that makes really, really great sense to our team members. Now, if anybody's doing this now, I'd love to hear in the chat how often you're doing this and what it looks like. And maybe if you've had any great experiences, you can share your stories too. And while you're doing that, I want to go into the next piece of my share today, which is around creating clarity around compensation opportunity moving forward, right? We talked about really clearly showing compensation value, but where's the opportunity to continue to grow? We know as owners and leaders that it's endless, but how can we help empower our team members to be able to really connect the dots between their performance and their paycheck? Doesn't matter if you're team-based pay or if you're a commission-based salon. What we know is that when somebody drives their business within your business, that most of the times that translates to an increased opportunity for them. So let's look at some of the things that really show up as challenges for our service providers when it comes to driving revenue. First one, I'm sure you're all thinking it, we talked about it already, is this part-time schedule preference. I'm not here to say that everybody should work full-time, but it is something that should be considered, especially if there's frustration around what the opportunity looks like. So this is a brand new tool from Qnity. It's called the Compensation Potential Calculator. If you participate in the growth workshop or in a growth implementation group, this is a tool that you'll have access to. And it's designed to help show how schedule preference really can make or break financial opportunity. So let's take a zoomed in look at this. So every 13 weeks or every quarter, we want to use this tool to show what the actual compensation for each team member is. And we can also show what the potential compensation would be if there were a different number of hours per week being worked. So here we've got Angelina Bernard. She's one of our salon pretend employees. Her gross earnings were about $14,000. She worked about 350 hours. Her average hours per week came out to 26.5 hours. Her average hourly rate, $40.50. Now, let's say Angelina is wanting to make more money. And we know that she can maintain that level of productivity to be able to generate that $40.50 per hour. What if we had Angelina work 35 hours a week? Her total hours worked for the quarter would be 455. Her average hourly rate remains the same. Let's say her productivity remains the same. Her potential earnings go from 13,000 to 18,000. The difference, about $4,500. Now, this is just in one quarter. So let's look at this over the course of a year, and this tool does actually quantify what the potential throughout the year would be. So Angelina, if she continued on that 26-hour work week, would have made about 63,300 hours. Now, in this example, we had filled in the other quarters, and there were some differences in her hourly rate. So let's say she increased her hourly rate to 45 from 40. And she still worked 26 hours a week. Now, let's say she challenged herself to work a little bit more. She worked 35 hours a week, which made her total hours for the year about 1,820. Average hourly rate stayed the same. What we can see is rather than making $63,000 a year, she's now making $83,000 a year. That's a $20,000 difference by working an extra shift or so per week. Now, again, my intention here is not to say, go tell everybody to work 35 hours a week. My intention here is to help you really provide your team with tools that put them in the driver's seat so they can make their own decisions around what their schedule looks like so that it can be aligned with what their income needs are. Anybody think this tool would be helpful for them in having these conversations with their team around their schedule preference? Some people are working a little bit less because they don't know the difference in the opportunity that it gives them. Now, the next growth challenge is operational inefficiencies, sometimes schedule related, sometimes not. Here's an example of a team member who Here's an example of a salon that did a survey that was around what the preferred appointment hours are for their clientele. You can see the darker the blue on this chart here, the more high demand these hours were. Now, what we were able to do here with this super visual example is show how somebody's schedule might be a little bit misaligned with the client count opportunity. Okay, so you can see in orange, these are the hours being worked, and here in dark blue are the areas where we know we're going to have the most traffic. So what if we made just a slight shift to our service provider's schedule so that their hours were a little bit more aligned with these high traffic times? What's the difference that this could make for their opportunity? Well, in this example, and this is a true story from a salon owner that we know, increasing client count because of being available during the high traffic hours was able to result in 6 more clients per week. Okay, this was an increase of $480 per week in sales based off of this service provider's $80 average ticket. So in this case, that slight shift led to an additional $23,000 in service revenue a year. Another example of how schedule can impact opportunity, when we are looking at our schedule availability as a whole, as a salon, if we have our entire team working the exact same shifts, then it might create a challenge in that they are, for lack of a better word, put in a position where they're competing with each other for clients during that day. This is something that we did at Citrus, where we realized, every team member was working on Thursday, and Thursday was getting a little bit watered down. Now, it didn't hurt the salon as a whole, but for the team members that were still building, there was a lot of competition on Thursdays. When we shifted some of them over to Tuesday, we found that there was a huge difference in their productivity level. So something to consider as you're setting up new team member schedules. Next, math and numbers anxiety. Our industry has about 70% of the people working in our industry experience some form of numbers or math anxiety. So how can we really keep things simple so that they can have a clear path for how to grow their business? What we know is sometimes we as leaders and owners get caught in the weeds on all of the different metrics. And when we share all of those metrics with our team members too often, we create confusion. And what happens when somebody's confused? Well, typically they do nothing. So how can we take a more simplified approach to helping our team members grow their business? Well, we can focus on the 2 numbers that matter most: client count and average ticket. When we focus on these numbers, we eliminate a lot of the noise that fogs people's ability to be able to be proactive in driving their business forward. We can really focus on these other metrics that are still important, but the conversations we can have with our team would be around using these as drivers, which is what we refer these to, drivers, to grow the 2 numbers that matter most: client count and average ticket. This on the screen here is the Qnity dashboard. So we look at this as, how can we drive client count? Well, we've got 3 key drivers that will help us drive client count: referrals, retention, and rebooking. To drive average ticket, again, in the spirit of simplicity, we're looking at total average ticket. To drive average ticket, we can focus on product sales, add-ons, and of course, our pricing structure. So something like this can create a sense of peace and clarity and really give our team members the inspiration and really empower them to be able to grow their business in a way that makes sense to them. 4th challenge, lack of understanding how to drive their paycheck. We talked a lot earlier about how we really need to be able to help team members connect the dots between their performance and their paycheck. And we might think it's simple math. Well, it's not always like that for our team members. Sometimes it's something as simple as doing the math for them. This is a tool that I use at Citrus. This is not a Qnity tool because everybody's compensation structure is a little bit different. But this is a calculator that I use when I'm having one-on-ones with my team members to really help show them how their sales translate to their paycheck. You can see I've got some simple calculations of what our compensation structure looks like. I break it down into client count and average ticket, and I show them what their sales are going to translate to as far as income, either biweekly, which is how our team gets paid, and annually. That really helps them to be able to set a goal that's meaningful to them. The last one is that your team's not motivated by money. This is probably the number one thing I hear. And I'll be honest, it's one of the number one things that I hear in my own business too. What we've got to do is learn what does motivate our team members. So chances are, if it's not money, it's one of these four things. It's impact. How can they make an impact on themselves, the people around them, on the business? Money, of course, is one. I will say, in recent months, money has been showing up as more of a motivator than ever before. Next, time off. Time off is something that's really meaningful to our team members. It's meaningful to me. I want to have a life. But one thing that I'm able to do is connect the dots between how money can help support that time off. So as leaders, are we having that conversation? Another thing that really motivates our team is creative. And in my salon, when we have somebody who takes a creative lead, part of their responsibility is really walking the walk. And so although they might not care about money, they know they have to be an example and be a leader. And so that's what motivates them to perform, because that's what's going to give them opportunities to really lean into their creative opportunity. So think about what your team's money why is. And we love this quote here at Qnity: money isn't the most important thing in life, but it's reasonably close to oxygen on the gotta have it scale. Chances are you can tie back the things that mean the most to your team members, to their performance at your salons and spots. So let's talk about our key takeaways for today. And by the way, before I jump into this, I know I just spit a ton of information out at you. All of this is included in our growth workshop. We go much, much deeper into these tools, into all of these best practices around creating clarity around compensation, value, and opportunities. So if you want to go deeper, that's definitely something to check out. So your key takeaways from today: develop a simple and visual method for communicating full compensation value. Keep it simple with 2-number growth. Get your team members focused on the numbers that matter most: client count and average ticket. Do the math and show them the money. And consider creating something that's a simple and visual calculator like this. I used to do the math for my team members on, the back of a sheet of paper. That napkin math is not as powerful and clear as a really, really beautiful tool like this. Now, lastly, coach to each individual's why. Your team members are going to have different reasons why their performance at work is important to them. As leaders, it's our job to find out what those reasons are and coach to them as they try and reach their personal goals. So with that, that's the end of my jam-packed share. I do want to just take a moment to open it up for questions or comments, if there's any that you guys have for me. So if you have questions, please put it in the chat, or feel free to come off of mute and ask. And let me know what you thought of today's share. Right? If we don't have, we got a couple of chats coming in. Great, informative. Yes, and again, if you want to learn more, and Marie, I know you're on this call, or maybe Ashley, if there's any opportunity to put in the link to the growth workshop, that might be a great thing to put in there in case somebody wants to learn a little bit more about this. If there are any other questions, please put them in. Otherwise, we will end our time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on the Monday Noon.